And we are back with the Citizen Effect podcast. My name is Keith Whiddon, 100% of Whiddon Criminal Defense, 50% of Erase My Arrest. And today I'm very happy and very lucky to be joined by the one and only Jessica Mogill, who I believe would be one half, maybe is how she would describe herself, of Chris' video. But I'm going to throw it to her. Jessica, introduce yourself to the crowd and let people know where they can find you on social and other platforms.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Keith. I am truly honored to be on here. So, yes, I am the Jessica Mogill of the Mogill duo that also has Michael, of course, with Crisp. And I'm the head of coaching strategy here. So, everything in our coaching program, that we've scaled over the past few years has really been a culmination of Michael's ideas and my execution. And I am very happy to connect with anyone on my LinkedIn at Jessica Mogill.
Awesome. You ran right into the I executed on these ideas, and it immediately reminded me. I spent about half a day with Mike Morse. I believe that was 2 Thursdays ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we were introduced, of course, to Mike, but also his implementer, the person who executes the ideas. And a lot was talked about in traction, which I know that also Crisp is very much a what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe an advocate for traction.
Absolutely.
Is that okay? So do you feel like within Crisp that you've actually implemented traction to the point where, Michael gets to be the ideas person, and that means you get to be the person who puts life to those things?
Yeah, that is a great question. So we have a bit of a unique situation here. So Michael has always been the visionary, which is so incredible. Firm believers in traction. We have implemented it across the board through our entire company, all the departments. We do have a COO now. So our COO actually really brings everything to life. I pretty much stay in the lane of the coaching side. I was that position. I was that COO pretty much until our second daughter came. So Crisp is my first child. And then, I've got 2 daughters. So when the live being daughters came, I was able to take a step back. So Alex does a lot more of the day-to-day, but from the coaching side, whether it be workshops, trainings, content, I'm absolutely like boots on the ground, hands-on with that.
Okay. And so, look, Crisp is known for video, or well, maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I'll say this: whenever I first came into the Crisp funnel, if you will, or it is a funnel. When I first came into the sales funnel of Crisp back in 2017, it was the video that caught my eye. As I was telling someone else, Crisp made being a lawyer look sexy, even. Okay. Yeah. And so, because in 2017, I'd never seen anything like that, especially in my market. But that's a whole different story. So, when it comes to what do you think that Crisp is becoming more known for now? Is it more for the video product, more for the coaching product, or is it no? Look, these are 2 parts to one coin.
Much, much more to the coaching product. So I would say in 2017, absolutely, it was the video aspect. So that was our bread and butter. That's how Crisp really started. And then we really made that evolution in 2018 of switching to the coaching side of things. So video will always be a component for us. It is absolutely a part of, like you said, making the lawyer side of things look sexy. It's the side of like, hey, we're putting a brand to this person. We're really cultivating their story and we're making that exciting to their audience and everything. So that will always be a part of it. But really, when it comes down to it, the most impact that we've had across the board absolutely comes through the coaching side, because through that, we're able to impact not just the firm owners, but also their team members and so far and beyond.
I think that that's a great point to make, because you and I have worked together, or I've worked with Crisp, I should say. You have been the primary coach that or not the primary in-person or workshop coach that I've worked with. And my day-to-day coach is Elena, who is wonderful. I could tell stories about how wonderful Elena is for the rest of this hour and into another hour. But she's going to be on the podcast, I hope, and I'll let her tell some of those stories. But you talk about how you're able to make a change not only for a firm owner, but also for the employees of that firm. And I think that it's so important how whenever we have our workshops, you talk about, or I'm sorry, other lawyers talk about how I was able to do this for my employees. What are some of the stories that you hear that stick out to you? Because one that sticks out to me is whenever a lawyer in the room said, I bought a Peloton for everybody in my office. What are some of those stories that you hear, being the workshop coach, that really stick out to you, that you're like, wow, we were a part of that?
Gosh, I don't even know where to start. We actually just had an entire workshop a couple of weeks ago, an intensive taught by one of our coaching clients, and it was all about culture. And it was really just one of those things, too. I think it's the simplest form of things, but the celebration survey of just starting at the core fundamentals of knowing what actually drives your team members instead of making that assumption that everyone wants a vacation to Europe and everyone wants a Starbucks gift card. Like, maybe that's not what they want. Maybe they do want a Peloton. Maybe they want an extra day off with their child. Maybe, what is that? But it's setting those types of things and that precedent from the very beginning of knowing that and knowing truly intimately what each person is motivated by and what they're working towards. You're creating things that they're going to remember forever. And that to me is just it's so exciting, and being able to say, hey, that was on their bucket list and they were able to check that off. And there's actually a firm in Florida that just truly moved me. I mean, she came to me in tears and was like, Jessica, you have no idea the impact that you have made, not just on me, not on my partner. And she goes, but our team members are happier. And because of that, and because of Crisp, they're better husbands, they're better wives, they're better parents. But she's like, you're making such an impact that you actually will never see all of it. But I want you to know that.
Wow. And I guess that's one of those reasons that gets you up out of bed in the morning. So,
Absolutely. It's for our team and for, and beyond. There are so many people that we get to indirectly impact in such a positive way. And that to me is really, it makes everything worth it.
okay. Now, for someone who is on the sidelines, or maybe they just opened their own firm, maybe they just hired their first employee. What is some of the advice that you would have for that new lawyer, or that lawyer who's starting his own firm or her own firm, and he or she just hired their first employee? What is something they need to do right out of the gate?
Honestly, spend time with that team member, invest in that team member, and understand that they are an investment. It is not a cost. It is not something to check a box and just to hand something off, but to truly, truly invest in them. I think so often we spend so much time focusing on, your new client experience and what does the intake look like, and every step in that process, which rightfully you should.
Hmm.
But you also have to understand, what is your team member's experience? What is your first impression on them? I could talk about hiring, recruiting, team member experience for days upon days. You know this, but
Yes,
I always really say, like, hiring is sales and marketing, and team member retention is also sales and marketing, because you really think about when you're bringing someone in, they're making a life choice to join your firm. It's not just a choice of like, oh, this is the coffee I want to drink today. This is like where I want to commit myself to grow. And this is where I want to commit myself to my career. And so, any person, I think, just from day one is really, really investing in them. And I'll tell kind of an aside with this, I interned with GE Oil and Gas. So I did that when I was in college. And I just remember I picked up, moved to Houston, knew no one there. And there's like in the lobby, we're all, our start class is there all together. And then we disperse throughout the building. And I show up and they're like, who are you? We weren't really planning on you being here today. And that was my first impression there. There was no computer for me. There was no one for me to report to. And, at, 19, 20 years old, of course, I'm like, okay, this is what it is. But like in reflection, that should never be anyone's first day experience.
I agree. And I'll say that whenever it came to, so for the very first time, I have what I'm calling a summer associate. And this was someone who I had known from my community, went to Washington, D.C. to go to law school, going into her third year of law school. And whenever we met two or three times just over Zoom while the semester was in, like, hey, what are your goals and objectives to whenever you do come back for the summer? What is it that you want to make sure that you learn, see, do while you're here? So that way I can make sure that I tailor your role and your experience around things that I wish I knew whenever I was in law school, things I wish I saw in law school, but also things that you would be interested in.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that before Crisp, I don't know that I would have given serious thought to. It have been like, hey, come in. We're going to go to court on Mondays and Wednesdays, and you're going to work in the office on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So just
Yeah.
do whatever Charlie tells you to do, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, and it's one of those things just really understanding, like, it's so meaningful because then they understand that it's not just about you, it's also about them, and you're invested in their growth, and honestly, that's what does create the longevity, and we have so many team members who have been with us for years upon years simply because we have taken that time to invest in them.
what are some of the ways that, or maybe I should ask a different way, what are some of the tools that Crisp uses to make sure that they are investing in their employees, or to make sure that they feel recognized and things like that? Maybe outside of the crisp experience or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we actually started something a few years ago called the Culture Committee. And I highly recommend this because in the beginning days, when there were 15, 20 of us, it was the Jessica Committee. And I was the one who was like, hey, we're going to go volunteer. Hey, we're going to do an outing. And, I would take it really personal when someone couldn't attend or they didn't want to do that or anything. And then also at that size, it's like, oh, another request from Jessica. Jessica wants us to do something else again. And so we actually created a culture committee, which has representation from, I think, every single team in the company. And they're in charge of these events now. And they are polling the team to see, hey, what's going to be so exciting? We did a celebration at the end of for Q1. It was like, hey, we hit all of our goals, all of these things. So we have axe throwing at the office. We've got food trucks. Like they are promoting those types of things. And that is just, something for our team to be able to collaborate and actually experience and get to know each other outside of the office. We also, in terms of like longevity and feedback loops, we make sure we have quarterly reviews with every single team member. So they are assessed on KPIs, on actual performance, as well as our core values. But that gives them the opportunity and the forum to make sure that they're communicating and getting feedback, which, if it's fast feedback, we're not going to wait an entire quarter. I will be truthful about that. Like we're really fast on giving things like that.
Hmm.
But we've got that. We do a weekly internal report. So our team members have the opportunity every single week to submit like where is their focus? Where are they feeling stuck? Do they need help somewhere? And they can submit there because sometimes they don't really know how to approach someone, but behind the keyboard, they can say anything. And so we just want to make sure that those types of communication are open from the very beginning. I personally still meet with every single new hire. So within their first 90 days, because I don't interview every single person anymore, I personally want to open that feedback loop even to let them know, like, hey, this is important to me as well. The worst thing that could happen is, someone leaves and they're like, well, I didn't feel heard. And I'm like, well, I never heard about it. This is my first time. So I want to open up that relationship with them as well.
So what does that first meeting with the new hire look like if it's not someone, or even if it is someone that you interviewed? What's that first interview on the Chris side of things, as opposed to on the potential employee side of things?
Yes, yes. So the reason I said within the first 90 days, I used to do this in like the first week and it was drinking out of a fire hose. And there's really nothing to report back yet because they're like, I just started, everything's great. And I just learned all of this stuff. And so, I tell them, I'm like, hey, this meeting can be 5 minutes, it can be 30 minutes, and you're really in control of this meeting. But this is for you to tell me the good, the bad, the ugly. I want to know feedback. I want to know where maybe we've missed the mark. And then, of course, I always ask them, I'm like, is this what you thought it would be? Because I want to know back to the hiring side of things and the sales and marketing side of things. Is this what you thought you signed up for? And then I also tell them, especially if I didn't interview them, literally ask me anything. I don't
Hmm.
care if it's about Crisp, about my personal life, anything. I just want you to know that I am here. You can Slack me. We have an open relationship now to where if you do need something, you can come to me. The only caveat I always say is do not bypass your team lead. If it is something that your team lead should actually solve, I am a very, very big proponent in terms of empowering the team leads to be able to solve things and giving them autonomy to do so. So I don't want them to bypass for the sake of bypassing, but if it's truly something that they think would impact the entire company, by all means, please come to me.
Okay. So basically you're saying if it's something that can be handled within the department, make sure your team lead is the first to know about it. And then the
Exactly.
team lead would have the option to relay it up to you if needed.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Have you ever had a situation where someone reported to a team lead something and then maybe nothing was done and then you got pulled in by that employee anyway? And how did you handle that situation?
Honestly, no. The thing is we really do empower our team leads to be able to handle things. I would
Hmm.
say usually if people are coming to me directly, it's usually about a bigger initiative, a bigger picture, and maybe it's a nonprofit that they are super passionate about and they want to know like, hey, is there a way that Crisp can work with this? Or is this another opportunity or partnership or something? But they're not really, I try to just make it very crystal clear. Like, if you're coming to me about your career path, you're coming to the wrong person. If you're coming to me about, you're off track on a KPI, you're coming to the wrong person. So honestly, they usually come to me about bigger picture initiatives or sometimes even as mentorship. It really gives us that opportunity. I have like what's called JM office hours. And so
Hmm.
people can request time with me and I open that up monthly and we can talk about anything. Like if it is mentorship, if it is like, I actually had someone once, she was about to get married. She had her husband take the print and she was like, Jessica, I need 30 minutes. I need you to talk me through his print. So it literally could be anything, honestly. But my focus on a lot of this is just really empowering our leaders to be able to handle those situations rather than things having to come to me.
You touched on something that I really have found value in and tried to implement in my small firm. And it's that you want this, whether it be mentorship or career path. I believe that you said at one of the workshops that a first day employee should have an idea of what a career path could be for them.
Hmm.
And it's given me this idea or this maybe policy, even where I go to my employees and I say, I want you to feel like you can grow where you're planted. What would be a goal that we can help you achieve here?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
So,
No, I love that. And we not did not always have career paths by all means. Like, when we first started, we did video. We had a project manager and a cinematographer and that's all we had. So there was nowhere else to go. But as the company has grown and eventually we had a marketing department, eventually we had a coaching department, things like that. But we want people to see that mobility within the company. And I will say one thing that's really important to note with that, not everything is always going to be like quote unquote upward mobility. Like not everyone's
right.
meant to be a leader. And
Hmm.
we really help the team understand that too in terms of what their strengths are and what they want to do and don't want to do. I've got two people on top of my mind right now who, they did leadership for a while and they are more than happy and content saying, I don't actually want that. So they learned that. But I think it is really, really important to make sure that people do see growth opportunities so that they see a future at your own firm.
Right. And again, that's what I like to say, grow where you're planted.
I
So
love
where,
that.
I borrowed it from Devin. So Devin was the first person to think of it. So what you also touched on, Colby and Print, and I know that you could probably talk for the rest of the afternoon about Colby and Print, but how about this for the listener? Can you quickly describe what Colby and Print are and why they are relevant in, at least in the work? Let's go with the workplace setting. Now, the relationship setting, that's a whole different
Yeah.
animal. But well, then again, maybe that's something where you could talk about your Print and Colby versus Michael's Print and Colby and how the two of you work together, because that kind of parlays both relationship and professional. But if you could quickly
Yes.
break down for the audience what those are and why they're relevant and
All right.
how Crisp uses them.
Yes, I'll give you the fastest version possible. So, as you know, we could literally have on-site trainings where we spend an entire day on each of them. So,
Yes.
Crisp uses all of this in hiring. So, I actually will not even do a final interview with someone unless we have this information already. So, Colby Print, and we also use Wonderlic, which I won't get super into that, but essentially, those three assessments really give us a behind-the-scenes view of a person and in the best way possible because we want to put someone where they're going to succeed. We want to make sure that it's a two-way relationship and that they are set up for the best thing possible. So Wonderlic tells us the cognitive ability. So really if you think about the resume and what that looks like in terms of, their learned behavior, what it is that they actually have and cognitively. Colby is going to tell us how they go about doing things. Are they going to solve a problem by generating ideas? Are they going to solve a problem by making a spreadsheet? So that really is going to summarize, just if given the freedom to be themselves, which way would they go? And then print is really going to tell you why. So, why is the person doing what they are doing? And that combination of being able to see all of those aspects really helps us put people in the right seat. I often say with all of these assessments, and Colby really puts this out there as well, it's like giving someone the ability to write with their dominant hand versus their non dominant hand. And if you have the freedom to write with your dominant hand, things are going to come smoothly. It's going to be prettier. It's going to take less time versus if you force someone into a seat where they have to use their non dominant hand, it's going to be stressful. It's going to be messy. It's going to take a lot of time. And we just want to set everyone up for success.
And it's going to make everybody uncomfortable. It's going to make not only the new hire uncomfortable, it's potentially going to make the person or the people around that person uncomfortable. So,
Exactly. It's just gonna stress them out, and so we wanna make sure everyone is in the right seat, and I really wanna make it loud and clear, we do not use them to disqualify, we use them to put people in the right seat. So, I
right.
can say confidently, a quarter of the people I've hired before have applied for one position, and I've put them in another.
Right. And you actually led into the next question where have you come across people who are wonderful candidates, but they were applying for something, maybe it is in video and you're like, no, you're not a video person. You're a coaching person. And you're able to, and you're able to put them in that seat and they realize, oh, wow, I am really good at this and I flourish in this.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Yes, I can think of so many examples. I know I've given one example before. I was actually on the Colby podcast and told them someone applied once for a marketing assistant position, and everything about her said sales, and I knew it. And so I put her in sales. She had never sold anything in her life. This was years ago. She's gone on to open her own yoga studio in Florida. She is such an entrepreneur, but I saw that in her very early on and she flourished. She did so amazing in that position. I have hired people who were client facing, or so we thought. They thought they wanted to be client facing. And as we uncovered more and learned more, we're like, no, actually, this Colby and this print are so great for operations and behind the scenes. And I found that this person thrived then rather than having them, having to be front stage for a lot of things. And so really just understanding like there is no right or wrong to any of these. We just want people to be their best selves and then we're all going to win.
right. I agree. And you talked about, or well, I want to talk specifically about print. And being that Tim Grover has obviously been on stage for Crisp, have you read Relentless?
Yes, I have.
Is it number one? Is that a game changing book? Not to borrow anything from Chris and the Game Changers Summit. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
that's coincidental. But is that not an just eye opening book, or it was eye opening for me, I should say.
It is so eye-opening, and honestly, if you just need like a gut punch check, I
Yeah.
think that is the book for you.
Right. I agree. There were so many times whenever I was listening to it that I was like, oh my God, this makes sense to me now, or I see this in myself. But then there are those things are like, oh, I don't know if I have that.
Right.
But I felt good because about whenever I got done, like, okay, I'm about 2/3 of the way there. So I'm
Yeah.
66% cleaner. I need to work on this other 33% to really become that person. That being said, in Relentless, about I don't know, one half to 2/3 of the way through the book, Tim Grover goes into the dark side.
Mhm.
And it made me, whenever you're talking about print, it made me think about how there is a little bit of a dark side to print, if you will. And I don't want to call
Yes.
it dark side because that's not doing it justice. But do you understand what I'm saying?
It's the shadow behavior. Yes,
Yes.
which is a dark side. So
Okay. All right.
you're not wrong with that. I think that is probably one of the most enlightening things about the print report to me is seeing where there's a list of best self behavior and then there's a list of shadow behavior. So it's basically saying, hey, you at your best right now. So for example, I know you're print. You just want to win. So that is part of yours. But there is, hey, when you are in your best self, you are going to be optimistic. You are going to want to win. You're going to be decisive. You are going to be action oriented. However, there are things that could trigger you
Mhm.
and that will then throw you into shadow behavior. Okay. So same
Mhm.
thing goes. I mean, every single one of us have this, but I think it is the most enlightening part of the print report because even if I feel myself getting frustrated in certain situations, I eat, sleep, drink, print nonstop. I will even still go to my print report and say, something has triggered me. What is it on this list that has triggered me so that I can bring myself out of this back to my best self?
Right. Well, I mean, just sitting here thinking about it makes me think I need to go back and look at mine because I kind of want to know really what my dark side or shadow behavior would be so that way I can understand it. And there actually was a time whenever I first did the print for the summit in 2019, and I came back with it and I handed it out to everybody in my office, and
Yes.
everybody was like, "Yep, that's it. That's accurate. That's
Uh-huh.
100% on par." So,
Absolutely, and I love actually that you went back and took it to your team. That is something I highly recommend. Anyone who starts and they're going to work closely with Michael, like, here's his print, here's his Colby. But I think the thing is the awareness is such a difference. So even just
mhm.
the awareness of yourself and understanding like, hey, mine, for example, I need some time to myself. I need to process things, and that's how I'm going to do my best work. And so I can catch myself and I can actually coach myself through those situations simply knowing that about myself.
Yeah. But it's also really good for getting a few laughs out of your team members that you're close to because they
Oh, yeah.
can be like, "Well, that makes sense now, doesn't it?" So,
Oh, yeah. It's funny because our candidates, of course, whenever we hire someone and bring them in, I think they're actually truly surprised at how much we use Print and Colby. And they're like, you guys actually literally talk about this every single day. And as you hear it, I mean, you're a coaching client. We see this, but we understand that for our clients because we want to best support them and best communicate with them as well.
and it's also great for matching up with a coach that fits their needs, such as I've been matched with Elena for the last year and a half, almost 2 years. So,
Exactly.
um, you've led into talking about how these are hiring tools, but Crisp has an entire hiring funnel,
Yes.
and it is very not complex is not the right word. It's very maybe detailed or very I don't want to say
Meticulous.
onerous. Yeah, meticulous. I like you said meticulous. We'll go with meticulous. What does y'all's as abbreviated as you can be, number one, how long did it take you to develop that hiring funnel, or was that something that you learned from working, in other environments?
Yeah, so it was years, honestly, because there were so many iterations to it. I would have a step in place, and then a candidate would fail me, and I was like, "Nope, there's something else to this."
Hmm.
Or, I would have a deadline and something got missed, and I'm like, "Nope, this still needs to be tightened up." And so I can say for now, we haven't touched it in, probably 3 or 4 years and messed with it at all, but it did take me several iterations. Colby, I've been certified for over 10 years, and so that was a quick one in there. Print came to us probably 6, 7 years ago. So that was an addition once it came in, was like understanding that as well. And so our whole idea behind the funnel, honestly, is that we want to get people who are committed and people who want to work at Crisp and they don't want just any job. And this does that. It simply weeds out the people who are not committed to this. And so for us, and I would say honestly, from a firm owner standpoint, it actually makes your job a lot easier because
Hmm.
you're not wasting your time on people who are not interested, and you're not wasting your time on the hundreds of people who simply click to apply who maybe are not qualified. So it's an all around time savings, I think, for everyone. But truly, you get the best candidates because you know that they are committed to it.
And I'm shooting from the hip here. It's about a 15-step hiring process, maybe.
That is a great question. Probably, honestly, if I think about it, it's probably close to about 15 steps when you break them all down. But
Okay.
it's kind of a choose your own adventure. We want people to see, can you follow instructions is really what it comes down to. One thing I always tell people when they're thinking about the hiring funnel or anything, yes, it's going to be some upfront work, but really understanding when someone is applying to work for you, that is the best version of them. They're
Hmm.
putting their best foot forward to interview. I actually had someone the other day. They're like, "Yeah, it's like the first few dates when you go on with someone." And I was like, "Yeah, the bar is so high, and that's like what they're aiming for. But you're getting the best version of themselves. And if they're missing deadlines, then what do you think they're going to do when they come in your organization?"
Right. And then also the Print and Colby reveal who they may really be, because you can only be on a first date for so long. So until
Exactly.
a few cracks start to show. So
Exactly. Yes.
so was there a step in the hiring funnel that you added that was okay, this makes a big difference?
Honestly, the test assignment would probably be the one where we have people fall out the most, which means it makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
So the test assignment for us is really, really important because one, it gives the candidate an expectation of like, what is a day in the life? What type of things might I be working on? Because that test assignment correlates to their position. It also gives a day in the life because our deadlines are so tight and fast. And, I've made exceptions. I can count on one hand how many times that I've maybe extended that deadline and, maybe someone was getting married or, something very drastic like that in life where I would extend that deadline. But that one, honestly, people don't want to do the work. They don't want to do it in that time frame. And that's okay. You're not made for us. And I just really remind myself and I remind the recruiting team all the time like, hey, just because this didn't work out does not mean they're not a great fit somewhere else. They are just not made for the crisp culture, and that's okay. But yeah, I would say most people weed themselves out at the test assignment.
Have you ever run into, and by the way, the test assignment for the listener, that may be a 1 hour, 2 hour project. Would that be right?
Yeah, it would really vary depending on the position, but I will
Hmm.
give an example. If it's maybe someone for content and marketing, perhaps it's to write a blog post.
Okay.
Of course, a video editor, we would expect them to do a video edit where we give them some footage there. If it's a client-facing role, we would give them some client scenarios and, how are you going to respond in these situations? So we give them something that's very, it depicts a day in the life for that
Hmm.
position.
And what's the typical turnaround? Was it 1 day, 3 days,
24 hours.
24
It's a
hours?
solid 24 hours from whenever that email is sent. So, uh, I will just tell you, I've had my heart broken many times and I've made so many mistakes where I have conceded, and I'm like, "Oh, but it was just 5 minutes late. It was an hour late. They still got it to me." It has literally never failed me once. If something was ever late, even by 2 minutes, the person never worked out.
Have you ever had a situation where someone came in, they were given the test assignment, and they're like, look, I can't do it because XYZ has happened, sick child, getting married, whatever. Do they ever get invited to reapply?
Yeah, that's a great question. If it is a dire situation, I will absolutely extend the deadline. But I think you have to define dire and what that looks like in your terms. If someone says, "Oh, I have dinner plans,"
Hmm.
you're not going to get an extension for dinner plans. Like that is something where, a deadline is a deadline. Of course, if it were something like my child, has to go to the ER or what, like, of course, I'm going to be empathetic in those situations. If they choose to apply again for themselves, totally fine. But in our, hiring process, even when we talk to them, we tell them about this assignment on the phone call with
Okay.
them. So they know that it's coming. So it's not like this blindside email of like, oh, I didn't see it. I didn't get the email. We've already had a dialogue about it.
So on the first phone call that you're having with them, you're letting them know that, hey, you're going to have to take these assessments. There will be a test assignment, things like that. You just need to be on the lookout, basically.
Yes, we set expectations with them and our recruiters let them know like, "Hey, I'm gonna send this around X time today," whatever that looks like, but there is a dialogue, so it's not gonna blindside them.
Okay. That I'm glad that you revealed that because that's something that I didn't quite catch even in our workshops.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you kind of made that part clear
Yes.
that it's again about setting expectations for the whether it be the applying employee or the
Mhm.
potential employee or for the actual employee in their KPIs.
Exactly, absolutely, and that is a place, early on, we may not have always made that so clear, and so that was something that's like, "Hey, I wanna have a dialogue about it. I also want to see if I'm gonna get a verbal commitment from this person that that is something that they wanna continue to do."
Gotcha. Now, something that I always thought was interesting, and I actually really like it now
Mhm.
because I've almost kind of done a similar thing in my own office even before Crisp, but it goes along with the maybe the culture calls
Oh,
where
yeah.
you say that okay, if anyone has a problem, it's not working out, send me a message.
Mhm.
And we will, you'll get severance. You'll get a good recommendation from us. We'll part as friends. Could you tell the listener about what that culture call is, or and I'm culture call may not be the right words, but could
Yeah.
you kind of explain what came of that and how that's been important for maintaining the culture that Crisp has?
Absolutely. Yes. So we will randomly do this, and it might be once a year, twice a year, or anything. But one thing that we have found, especially with younger generations of people working, is they don't know actually how to have that conversation. They don't know how to quit. And we, have this huge mantra here of we want volunteers, we don't want hostages.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to drag you along if you don't want to be drug along. And so what we simply do, we have monthly all hands meetings with the entire team, and at random ones, we will just simply say, "Hey, here's our vision. You guys hear our vision 500 times a month. The direction this company is going. You know the decisions that we're making. And if these no longer suit you and you're not on board with that, simply tell us. We're actually trying to make it easy for them to leave, and to pay them severance and to help them find their next position. Because again, it goes back to just because they are not great here does not mean they're not going to be great somewhere else. And we want them to succeed. We want to set them up for that. And we have had people take us up on it, and I just like monitor and I'm like, all right, it's 5 p.m. Did we get anyone? Did we not get anyone? And it's really just giving them that opportunity to quit, really, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, hey, I don't know how, or I don't know what I have lined up, and this is like, let's take that burden off of you. And oddly enough, we've actually had people take us up on it and then later asked to come back. So maybe greener pastures are not always greener, but but that's just how it works. But one thing I tell clients all the time, because of course it's terrifying, the thought of doing that, and you're like, what if my whole team walks out? Well, guess what? What if your whole team stays and they aren't
Exactly.
actually vested in you or your clients? That's coming across in every single interaction. So when someone is scared to do it is probably when they need to do it the most.
Yes, I would agree with that. And the way that I've not necessarily implemented it fully, it's just that whenever I see the writing on the wall that things are not working out, I act as quickly as I can, and I pull them out and I'm like, look, this just isn't working for us. Here's severance,
Mhm.
and you will never get a bad recommendation from me. You can have anybody call me and use me as a reference, but this is not working out for us. Right now, I think that, but you're going to be a great fit somewhere else. And
Right.
so it's almost where I'm making the culture call in a roundabout sort of way, but I implement the latter half. Just instead of giving them the option, I just let them know that, this isn't going to work out for you and I anymore.
Yeah.
But they still get they get to leave here knowing that, okay, I'm not going to be hurt for
Exactly.
leaving here. And I think
Yeah.
that's what's important. I think that's what kind of scares people about quitting is that, oh my God, they're going to talk bad about me to references. I
Mhm.
can't use them as a reference. It's going to be this black mark or red mark on my resume, that kind of thing. So,
Exactly. And I think of one good thing too is like it eliminates a lot of resentment across the board. Like you said, it's giving that forum. It can be very amicable. And I would say even another added benefit is your A players and your engaged team members, they will actually be grateful for it.
mhm.
Because they are the ones who are committed and they are the ones who are in it for the long haul. And, sometimes when those people do take us up on it, they were pulling those people up the mountain anyway.
Right. Well, A players want to work with A players, and I found that out even within my own very small firm where I have 3 people in office, and well, 4 counting my summer associate. But A players only want to work with A players.
Mhm.
So we only have a few minutes left. I'm going to take about 10 more minutes of your time, if that's okay, because I
Absolutely.
do want to ask. You led with, okay, I'm over coaching now. We actually have a CEO, or I'm sorry, we actually have a COO now. I'm you know, coaching is my responsibility. What for you made the decision or helped you make the decision that, okay, I want to niche down into being over coaching as opposed to, no, I want to be the COO. I want to keep executing and let someone else do take over coaching.
Yeah, so I think this whole thing is really looking at strengths, and it's knowing where we're going to add the most value. That is really a logical way about it. I will say, kind of a behind the scenes decision of it as well, was Michael was number one and I was number two. And as a married couple, that it was actually, it worked out great. It is not for everyone to do that. I will say that. I will say the biggest challenge with that, though, was if we were to go on vacation, it was very,
Mm-hmm.
very difficult because I was still number 2,
Yep.
and for us to both disconnect and be able to walk away was really challenging for us, and so from just, like, a whole life perspective, it really made sense to bring in a COO at that point just because, we needed that semblance of integration as well, and so I will say, and I think people don't ever really understand the entrepreneurship and everything behind the scenes. It was probably 6 or 7 years into Chris before I ever took a vacation and actually, like, didn't take my computer, but that was not until we actually got a COO. But I would say, from the logical standpoint too, is just knowing your strengths. And that's one thing we really play in with a lot of our coaching clients is just like, what is the best and highest use of your time? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you add the most value? What are you doing? What should you not be doing? And I knew to where we were, from the one point, I needed that so that Michael and I could step away together. But from the other side, I had already built and scaled so much of the company, and Alex came in and she was ready to take it to the next level. But I knew at this point I was going to add the most value with our coaching clients. I personally have trained thousands of offices, whether it be in the medical space, attorneys, chiropractors, whatever that might be. And so I knew for me to add the most value at this company would be to take a step and move into that direction.
And how long have you been strictly over coaching? How and handed off the reins for operations?
So it's been over 2 years now, and I have really stepped aside. I mean, I work very closely with our COO and will always be, a part of CRISP and everything with that. But every aspect of it is just something now where I'm like, okay, I can consult on this. I can add any historical knowledge on it. But for me to really add the most value, it would be working with our coaching clients.
Now you describe Crisp as your baby.
It is.
How hard was it to say, "Okay, I'm trusting you, Alex, with my baby. You're the executor now. I'm trusting you." How hard was that?
I mean, truthfully, it was very hard. It truly, like, Crisp, it really is my first child. I think, it was 7 days a week, and Michael and I were even joking with, like, the 4th coming up, and we're like, wow, this is one of the first ones we didn't work. We worked every holiday up until,
Mhm.
a year or 2 ago. And so, lots of blood, sweat, and tears and all of this. But I think it goes back to also knowing when you've got the right person. And I knew that she was the right person. And I knew that, we had gone through some mishires in that role before. And of course, that kind of makes you a little jaded in that as well. But when you know, and it was one of those things where I'm like, you've done this. You've actually built a business to scale, you've scaled it bigger to what Crisp is now. So if anyone is capable, I know that you are capable. And so, yeah, I mean, in the beginning it is. And, I've actually coached some of our very own coaching clients on this because they're like, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to work on something else now. And I'm like, you will feel a little bit empty at first. I'm not going to lie because it's like, I'm used to being on call and being every aspect of that. And so, but once you get in that rhythm, it's great because everyone is in their best place and thriving.
Was Alex, was that an internal hire?
Yes. So initially she was an external hire. So she actually came in as a director position and
Mhm.
we very quickly realized her capabilities and quickly promoted her to C-suite internally. Yeah.
So would you say that she was able to grow where she was planted?
1000%. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, so I told you I was going to be respectful of your time. We're coming up on that 45-minute mark. And this is the single question that we ask every guest. And it's the citizen effect is simply I came into this place and I'm going to leave it better than I found it in this way. Jessica Mogill, what is your citizen effect going to be and where?
So my citizen effect is really multiplying your impact. And I think it all comes down to just the multiplier concept of empowering your people and really leaving them better than you found them, but giving them that autonomy to grow. And so when I say empowering your people, for me, that means our team members. That also means our clients. And I just want to make every person better and maybe to even discover something within themselves that they didn't even know that they had.
Okay. I said that was the last question. I actually have one more for you. What's on the horizon for Crisp that you can share just with the listeners of the Citizen Effect podcast?
That's a great question. So, I think anyone, if you've been following along with Crisp, you know we started video, then we went to marketing, and then we went to coaching. We released a SaaS platform last year as well. Our biggest thing right now is the Crisp Advantage. So, I think you can actually speak to that one, Keith,
I
quite well.
can. Yes.
So, that is really where our focus is right now because I think that also comes down to being able to multiply impact, across the board.
Okay. All right. Well, Jessica, for the listeners that have stuck around to the very end, go ahead and, if you will, reintroduce yourself and remind everyone where they can find you on social. And Chris, for
Absolutely.
that matter.
Yes, yes. Again, thank you so much, Keith, for having me. So, if anyone wants to keep up with Crisp, it is at Crisp Video on Instagram, and you can also find me on LinkedIn, Jessica Mogill.
All right. Jessica, I thank you so much for taking 46 minutes out of your day now to talk to me about this. I'm Keith Whiddon, 100% of Whiddon Criminal Defense, 50% of Erase My Arrest. Devin is off working in the bankruptcy office today, so he wasn't able to join us. Jessica, thank you so much for your time, and I'll look forward to seeing you Friday morning.
Yes, I will see you bright and early. Thank you, Keith.
All right. Thank you, Jessica.